Hi everyone. So, I've noticed a lot of people in game having trouble with how to properly utilize Global Channel 840 for Sulphite Rotas, so I thought I'd make this guide to help everyone get up to speed. I'll be covering a bunch of stuff like what a Rota is and why it's good, how to actually join one and what you need for it, how to do it once you're in, and a bunch of other little things to make the experience a lot smoother. I'll also be showing some clips from an actual Rota I did earlier, so you can see kind of firsthand some of the stuff that I'll be explaining. The full write-up of this guide will also be in a Google Docs link in the description if you prefer reading over watching this video. And lastly, I'll try and timestamp everything so you can get right to whatever part you're interested in. So, what is a Rota? A Sulphite Rota is when players gather a party of 6 people and everyone opens maps with Nico in it, whether that be from daily missions or from Sulphite Scarabs. The party then travels to each person's hideout and joins every map, collecting the 3 Sulphite piles present together. So, what actually makes a Rota good? Well, doing a Rota allows each player to get a lot more Sulphite with the same investment than they would alone, although it is a bit slower. The reason it works is because Sulphite scales not only off area level, but also map quantity, and being in a party inherently increases the map quantity by 50% per additional player, or 250% for a full party of 6. The Sulphite does get split between the party members, however, which is why everyone needs to run a set of maps instead of just the host. You're all running 6 times the maps, and all the Sulphite is getting split 6 ways, which at first sounds like it's no better than going solo, but the key difference is that you all benefit from the extra 250% party quant for free, which is why Rotos are more efficient. The actual mechanics of how much quant affects Sulphite gain is pretty complicated, and I couldn't find any clear answers after trying to research it. So I'm just going to admit that I don't know how it's calculated, and if anyone could point me to a credible source about how it works, I'd be happy to update the description with it. That said, I did some testing on my own, and I suspect that map quant works between 50 and 60% efficiency on Sulphite gain. So 100 quant would mean maybe a 55% increase of Sulphite, for example. But this is purely speculative, so please take it with a grain of salt. The point that I'm trying to get at here is that you get close to twice the Sulphite you paid for just by nature of being in a party. So where do you actually join one? You need to be in Global Channel 840, which is exclusively for Sulphite Rotas. So advertising things like Bestiary Rotas or Beachhead Rotas is basically spam, so don't do that. So how do you know which one to join? Well, there's a few different types of these Rotas, and you need to know which one's right for you before you try to join any of them. These types are singles, doubles, and triples, which refer to the number of maps that each person runs. So obviously in a triple, each player would open a total of 3 maps. At the very beginning of the league, people will be running singles and doubles, sometimes even with T5 or T10 maps, as nobody has progressed far in their minor atlas yet. Pretty quickly, this will turn into doubles and triples of T15 plus only, and you'll see almost no singles or low tiers being run for the rest of the league. People might do them in Global 820, but the focus of this guide is 840 for the more dedicated delvers. The type that you're interested in depends on what your Sulphite cap is, which can be increased by upgrading it with Azerite in the mine encampment. The actual Sulphite amount you get from Rota is frequently debated, and is more of a range than a number because there are a lot of factors that can affect how much Sulphite you get. But generally, the 38.5 thousand capacity upgrade is recommended for doubles and the 55,000 upgrade for triples. I personally get over 55,000 Sulphite from triples often enough to justify getting the highest upgrade, which is 65,000. Doing so also gives you the freedom of being able to start a Rota with a couple thousand Sulphite still in your tank instead of having to wait until you're completely empty. It's worth pointing out that these upgrades are expensive in terms of Azerite, especially for someone just starting out delving, with cumulative costs of over 25,000 Azerite for doubles and 80,000 for triples. Because of this, I recommend going solo and focus farming Azerite nodes until you're able to reach that 38.5 thousand Sulphite cap for doubles, unless you happen to be doing this at the very beginning of the league and are able to utilize the lower requirement Rotas. The other big benefit of going from doubles to triples, besides being able to delve for longer at a time, is that the people running them tend to be more experienced and make fewer mistakes. My goal with this whole guide, though, is to teach you enough to avoid these mistakes no matter how experienced you are. Let's take a look at some of the basic requirements for running a Rota. This is a pretty typical invite message, so we'll walk through it and see what everything means. LFM stands for looking for more, meaning that this player is hosting a party and needs more people to join. Double Nico Rota means that this is a double, so everyone's going to run 2 maps. T15 plus means that the map tier needs to be at least 15, and Q90 plus means that the quantity on each map needs to be at least 90. Some people might want 100 instead. If your map has slightly less quantity and can be raised in the minimum using sacrifice fragments, that's okay too. but what you shouldn't count towards the minimum are the default map device option and any multipliers you have through your awakening level. No reflect means that you shouldn't bring any maps with physical or elemental reflect on them. Even if you can handle those mods, you don't know if your party can, and you don't want to accidentally PK them. Skip boss should be self-explanatory. During Blight League, when accumulating master missions through boss kills was introduced, boss killing became standardized to try and sustain as many Nico missions as possible. However, now in Metamorph League, map bosses became significantly more difficult, and scarab prices became a lot cheaper, so use of master missions is a lot less necessary nowadays. Because of this, most groups are opting to skip the boss so that they can get their Sulphite faster. Only good layout has been a bit of a source of controversy, but we'll talk more about this during the map rolling section later. Whisper map for invite means that you can't just message someone inv and expect to be invited to the party. You need to link them all your maps to prove that you actually have all of them and that they have the right requirements that the host is asking for. Because of this, I think it's easier to have a bunch of pre-rolled maps on hand instead of trying to roll them as you see the message. Lastly, 4 out of 6 means that the party currently has 4 out of 6 players and there's 2 spots remaining. We just talked about some of the basic requirements for joining a Rota. Sometimes, though, a host might choose to put some additional requirements on. The most common of these is probably realm restrictions, for example, Europe only or no Asia, because pinging over a certain amount can make the game unplayable for the whole party. Another common one is no necro or unsummoned zombies, because minions have been a big source of lag and lower-end machines can't handle them. You might also see a host only allowing a few specific maps, which is a trend that I'm trying to get to catch on. Since the maps in this game are heavily randomized on purpose, it can take a while to learn the possible layouts and little quirks of where sulphite piles can spawn in the maps. By limiting the pool to only a few of the best layouts, the community as a whole can more quickly learn how to run the maps as fast as possible. So, I've been hinting here and there about getting maps that are actually good for running in Rotas. The first step of this is to get a map with a good layout. That's a kind of cryptic description, but the main criteria for a map being Rota viable is that it needs to be small in size and very open, with little to no backtracking. The tier 15 plus requirement also cuts a lot of potential candidates out of the pool, because some otherwise good maps like Beach don't exist at tiers higher than 14. Even then, a map that fits all these requirements might be considered bad or unwanted by people running Rotas because it isn't meta. The safest maps, the most meta of all of them, are Coves from T15 and Canyon, Promenade, and Summit in T16. The last two are especially noteworthy because they are natural T16 maps, meaning they don't exist at any tier lower than 16. Since Horizon Orbs are currently bugged and can only roll maps into natural maps, and since there are only 3 natural T16s, 2 of which are good, it is incredibly easy to turn any T16 into a Rota-friendly map. A single Horizon Orb has a 2/3 chance of getting a good outcome, and if the map turns into the 3rd natural T16, which is Carcass, that chance jumps to 100% since a Carcass can't be Horizoned into itself. The other 2 meta maps, Coves and Canyon, were 2 of the meta maps from Blight League that were picked for the previously mentioned criteria on top of their relatively easy bosses, although that bit isn't as relevant anymore. There are a few more maps that are still run sometimes and are generally considered okay for Rotas, but aren't always first pick, and these include Shore, Colonnade, Park, Dark Forest, Desert Spring, Reef, and Lava Lake. There are more potentially viable maps, but they are rarely run and shouldn't really be counted towards the list of good maps, so I won't go over them. Any map not already mentioned by now shouldn't really be considered for running, no matter how good an idea you think it is at the time. I've had someone unironically try to tell me that Lava Chamber is a good layout because it's hard to miss Sulphite, but I don't think it takes a lot to figure out why it's a terrible map, and if you try to join my Rota with one, I'm absolutely not letting you in. Now that you've got a good base, we have to figure out the mods and quant. As mentioned earlier, Reflect is an absolute no-no, and if you roll a map with Reflect, you should re-roll it or set it aside for personal use. All other mods are okay for Rotas, but just be aware that having too crazy of a map can kill your party, and having no regen or no leech can leave people without movement skills, as they're out of mana the whole time. For quant, these maps should always be 20% quality, because it's a very easy way to get higher quant on your maps, and chances are you aren't going to roll 90% without this. Speaking of which, I should point out that it's kind of hard to actually roll 90% quantity even with full quality, and it's annoying and kind of wasteful to sit there and just chaos spam maps. What I personally find to be a better strategy is to start with a bigger pool of maps and evolve the whole thing. You have a great chance of getting them to 8 mod or un-ID, both of which give huge quant bonuses and therefore a lot more sulphite for everyone. You can always save maps that brick from this for running later, or selling, so it's even cheaper in the end. If you're doing this with T16s, the fall outcome of upgrading the map into a higher tier is impossible, leaving you with an even better chance of getting a desirable outcome. Fragments and Awakening level 8 are also great ways of boosting quant higher, which I always take advantage of. I often find that after everything is accounted for, my maps can sometimes end up with 180% quantity, which is great for extra Sulphite gain. Further methods of boosting quant, like Tempests, are seldom used, but totally valid. Sextants, on the other hand, can actually end up being a hindrance to your party, because the huge density they bring can turn your already laggy party of 6 players into an unplayable slideshow, and will often get people killed, whether from lag or sheer difficulty of navigating through massive swarms of mobs. The same applies to Influence, although that's a lot harder to control. Okay, let's go through a quick demo of what I think the most effective way of rolling maps is. I'm starting with a large base of red maps here, which have already been split into T15s and T16s. The first thing I'm going to do is remove any maps that are already corrupted. The next step is to ID and scour all maps so that they become normal rarity. Next, I'm going to remove any T15s which have a layout that I don't like. In this case, that's all of them, so I'm actually not going to roll any of my T15s and just leave them where they are. Next, we'll horizon any T16s that aren't a good layout into Promenade or Summit maps. Now we'll quality all our remaining maps at 20%. Now we'll alk all our maps. Now we're going to search for Reflect on any of them. Since Reflect showed up on a few of them, we're going to reroll it using Chaos until there is no more Reflect on any map. Now we're going to vol the whole tab. If I were to be using T15s also, I would be checking to make sure that they didn't accidentally upgrade into a higher tier with a bad layout. However, since all the maps that I had left over were T16s, this is not a possible outcome, so I didn't have to worry about it. Now that they're all corrupted, let's check again for Reflect. Next, we'll take away any maps that have less than 90 quantity on them. Now at this point, each of these maps either has around 90 quantity, or they have 8 mods with around 120 to 130 quantity, or they're unID'd. Note that maps that do become unID'd through the use of Vault Orbs keep the mods that they had before, you just can't see them, so there's no chance of this one having Reflect because we already removed all the Reflect maps before volleying them. So now we have a nice pool of maps to run for Rotas, and I'll go ahead and store these with the rest of my Rota maps. Once you've actually joined a Rota, you need to know how to do it. If you join before the party's filled up, you can just kind of hang out until then, but don't get too committed to whatever you're doing, because once the party does fill up, you'll want to be able to drop whatever you're doing to go start the Rota. Once the party is full, the host will create the order and type something along the lines of order up in party chat when they're done. They're actually writing this in the party description, which can be found by going to the social tab, default S, and then the third tab, which for you will say current party. Where the writing is this box above, and they'll put something along the lines of player 1 / player 2 / etc. to let you know which order to run everyone's maps in. The person whose turn it currently is will open a map using either their Nico daily mission
One at a time.
or
One at
using
a
a
time.
scarab in the map device. It doesn't actually matter for the rest of the party which one they're choosing because scarabs only affect the current map owner's Sulphite gain. Then the whole party will enter the map. Since that means every portal is instantly used, you actually cannot die or else you will lose out on Sulphite. Once you're in the map, do not move until every single party member is loaded in. In fact, I wouldn't even send any server-side data, so I wouldn't attack in place or anything. Once everyone is actually in, then you'll run through the map. Instead of running through the map like normal, you'll just immediately go to all the Sulphite piles. Once you find a pile, wait by it until the entire party is standing by it, then anyone can click the Sulphite to collect it, and then move on to the next one. After the third pile, someone will drop a portal, and everyone leaves for the next map. On a more open layout like Summit, the group might split up a bit more to search for piles faster, and if someone finds one and the rest of the group doesn't realize that they found it, then the person that found it will type H or here in party chat to signal that they found a pile. Again, during the map, we won't be playing as if it's a normal map. The goal is not to full clear or kill mobs or pick up loot or anything, it's to get the Sulphite and get out. Most people will kill some mobs on the way to keep their flask charges up, and it's not a big deal if you quickly grab a chaos or something if it drops, but I wouldn't do anything that causes you to be slowed down and lag behind the rest of the group. Now, once each person finishes running their maps, check the order again for who the next person is, and join their hideout and repeat the process. Don't forget to thank your party when you're done. Now, there's a bunch of random stuff that can go wrong, and also a bunch of little etiquette things. We'll try and go over as many of them as possible in this section. For starters, like we said earlier, do not move until everyone is loaded into the map. When I say loaded in, I don't mean when their text location changes from the hideout to the name of the map, but rather when the portrait changes color from gray to color, and a little chat box message shows up saying that X has joined the area. The reason this is a thing is because Sulphite is supposedly calculated based on the current quant as it is discovered, and discovering the Sulphite before the full 250% party bonus is reached can lower the amount of Sulphite received for everyone. To be safe, I would take it a step further and don't even send any server-side actions instead of just not moving. If you're a summoner, unsummon your zombies so you don't accidentally lag someone to death. If you are in a realm that a host isn't allowing but you want to join that party for some reason, switch realms before joining. To force your hideout to be in the new realm, swap hideouts by talking to Helena and then swap back. This is also useful if you want to clear your portals so as not to confuse your party with what map to enter. If you crash during the Rota, which is a common occurrence, reopen your game as quickly as possible and mention in Global 840 that you crashed and to reinvite you. During the map, do not interact with random mechanics, especially ones that can get people killed, such as breaches, abysses, legions, blights, strongboxes, and essences. Do not message a host, "invite me please," when they ask you to link your maps for an invite. In the same vein, do not link maps with terrible layouts, low quant, or reflect mods, and act confused when the host tells you no. In general, if there is an instruction, follow it. If you die during a map, do not immediately respawn at checkpoint. Stay dead inside the map so your party can still benefit from the 50% quant that your presence gives. Similarly, if you cap out on Sulphite before the Rota is over, you shouldn't even have been in that Rota in the first place if you didn't have enough cap, but if you were, then don't leave the Rota early, or else the rest of the party misses out on potential extra Sulphite. Instead, let them know that you're full and AFK at the start of each map. That way, the Sulphite will only get split between 5 people, but they'll all benefit from your extra 50% in quantity. Don't click on Sulphite piles without the whole party present. This is one of the fastest ways to make people mad, if you do that. Be patient and count that all 6 dots are present before clicking, or let someone else do the clicking if you don't trust yourself to be careful enough. Follow all the instructions that your host gives. Personally, my hosting advertisement specifies that I only want 4 specific maps, and every single time, at least one person messages me with something not on that list. Don't leave a Rota early for any reason, especially if it's before you've ran all of your maps. If you leave when it hits your turn, you will quickly be outed as a scammer, and the entire global channel will blacklist you and ignore you. If you do have to leave for some emergency in real life, trade your maps and scarabs over to another party member so they don't accuse you of being a scammer. Don't run an obnoxiously slow build, or one without a movement skill that can jump gaps. You don't need to have 300% movement speed, but you do need to be able to at least keep up with the rest of the party during the map. Try not to play without an SSD, or with a party that's on the other side of the world. It's frustrating for everyone involved if someone is rubber banding a lot or has extremely long load times for each map, when the party can be running up to 18 different maps on several different realms. If you need to take a trade before a Rota has started, let your party know that you'll be right back and message them to reinvite you after your trade. If someone tries to trade you while you're in the middle of the Rota, let them know that you're busy and to wait until you're done. Tools like Mercury Trade are quite useful for this, to send a response with one click. Now this is completely optional, but if you want to get into a map faster after each map, you can claim a spot around the map device while waiting for the current member to open their map to signal that you're going to use that portal. And as a very general rule, don't do anything to annoy the other people in your party. Hopefully, by following everything in this guide, you can minimize the chance of that happening. If you plan on hosting a party, there are a few extra things you should know. First is to make sure that permanent allocation is on. If an Exalt were to drop in your party and it wasn't that way, it would be pretty awkward pretty quickly. Be extra clear with your advertising about any other rules you're imposing, and don't spam the chat too frequently with your advertisement. Once a minute should be enough. When actually creating the order, most hosts will put themselves last, and the first 5 spots are created just by going down the list of players. And lastly, it's your party at the end of the day, so it's up to you to enforce the guidelines that I've been talking about here. As a little bonus, here's some frequently asked questions that I see in the Global 840 channel. Is this only for deep delvers or some kind of elite club? No, it's for anyone who's interested in doing Sulphite Rotas for any reason. Most dedicated deep delvers either solo or gather their Sulphite with their friends anyway. What depth do I farm at? Well, it depends on what you want to do. If you want XP or you want to farm common fossils or fractured walls, an ideal depth would be around 200. If you want to farm cities, go to around 600. If you're looking for rare fossils, you want to go as deep as you can, preferably 1500 or higher. How much Sulphite does a double or triple give? Well, it's a complicated answer, but to put it as short as possible, 35,000 for a double and 55,000 for a triple. Can I advertise another type of Rota here? Where am I supposed to go for that? No, you're looking for Global 820, not 840. If 820 is full, that doesn't make 840 an appropriate place to advertise other Rotas, like Bestiary Rotas or Beachhead Rotas. What's wrong with my map? I swear it's a good map. Well, it doesn't matter, because Promenade is easier to get and almost always objectively better. Besides, even if you were right, it's better to pick the one that doesn't make other people mad. Alright, so here we'll walk through what it looks like to actually do a whole Rota. I'm planning on hosting one, so I've already prepared some maps, fragments, and scarabs in my inventory, and in a moment I'll paste my advertisement. It can take a while for the messages to start rolling in, but once I do start getting them, I'm going to go ahead and check that this person gave me the right type of map, and that they have enough quant and no reflect mods on there. Once I get the green light from me, we'll go to party invite. I had some open portals here, and I didn't want to confuse anyone with what map to enter, so I quickly swap hideouts.
Greetings.
This guy only messaged me 1 map instead of 3, and if you plan on hosting, you need to not be afraid to put your foot down and ask people what's the deal with this if they aren't doing something right. You'll see here that someone got added to the party, and it wasn't my doing. but my party member was quick to mention that they were just doing a trade, which was the right thing to do. The other option is to leave the party temporarily, do your trade, and message the host asking to be let back in, but either way is fine as long as you're being clear about what's going on. It was taking a while for the spots to fill up, so I started running a map, and during that time the last 2 people joined. I'm doing the same procedure of checking the maps that they sent me before sending my invites. Now that the party is full, I go to the current party section of the social tab, and write down the order in the party description field, and notify them that the order is ready. Again, I had to open portals, so I swapped hideouts to close them.
Greetings.
Now the party is ready to get going, so I check the order for who the first person is and travel to their hideout. In a moment, they're going to open their first map, and everyone hops in and gets ready to collect the Sulphite. Once we're actually inside, we're not mapping like normal gameplay. We'll kill some monsters along the way to keep our flask charges up, but we are for the most part ignoring everything except for the Sulphite piles. Note that we're waiting until everyone has reached the pile to click, so stragglers don't lose out on the Sulphite. Once we make it to the last pile, we leave the map as soon as it's collected. Jumping forward to this next map, you'll see one guy actually moved too early. If you look at the top left, the text changed to promenade and the person starts moving, but he didn't wait for the X has joined the area message to show up and the portrait to turn to color. If you look at how much Sulphite we get from the piles, the first one gave a little under 900, while the next one is going to give a little over 1200, and the last one a little over 900. So, there is a large variance on what each pile gives, but it's possible that moving early caused the first pile to be calculated with less than the 250% party quant from all members. Whether this is actually true or just superstition, we like to try and play it safe and assume that doing anything at all can lower our Sulphite gain. In this next map, everyone waited for the last guy to fully load in before moving, which is an example of what you should do, and this map won't be scuffed. In this map, I got a message for a trade in the middle of it. This is why I like using tools such as Mercury Trade, because I was able to let him know that I was busy and I would get to him later with just one click. It didn't slow me down at all for moving along with the group, and I didn't potentially miss out on a big trade because I had a one-button response at the ready. Now, in this last example here, we actually missed a Sulphite pile near the beginning of the map. If you look at this frozen frame, the bottom right unexplored area is one of the few spots where Promenade map can branch out into 2 paths, and unfortunately is also somewhere that piles can spawn. This is part of the reason I'm a fan of only running 4 specific maps, because it's easier to learn the little quirks of the map like that, and you won't need to be like us and have to run all the way back to the beginning if you know all the spots to check. That's about it for my Rota demo. Once all is said and done, don't forget to thank your party and enjoy your delving. I hope this guide was useful to you and that you have a better idea of what to do and not to do during these Rotas. It's a way better experience for everyone if the whole party sticks to these guidelines, so it would mean a ton to me to see that this guide is improving the overall quality of Global 840. If you do have questions about any of this stuff, don't be afraid to ask below and I'll do my best to answer all of them. Thanks for watching.